Morning, afternoon, or evening. It looks like you are opting to watch a video that comes in more than one part, probably because it was lengthy and we like to keep them kind of short so people don't have to sit too long. So this could be a two-parter, three-parter, four-parter. I don't know which one you're looking at, but just wanted to let you know if you are on, say, part one and it has a part two, that part originally will come out on a date separate than part one. So just keep a lookout for the same title name where it says part two, part three, or part four, and then you should find your way accordingly. I hope you enjoy, and I hope it helps clear up some sort of concept that someone was asking about. I'll see you later. Bye-bye now. Good morning, afternoon, or evening. Stephanie Joy with Joy Disability and all things Social Security. I am sharing some details of a recent article. Don't know if I can publish the whole article. I have to get permission, but wanted to share the details that I put together and some of the finer points that I think could be helpful for claimants for an understanding of the topic of malingering. And this came up because one of the viewers had asked me to do a video on malingering. So not only did I do that, but I also offered an article scope of it for a particular group. So anyway, I can share my basic thoughts on it and where I get that from. Okay, so the definition of malingering, first of all, is something around about like this. It's like an intentional exaggeration or an entire fabrication of symptoms or arguably impairments for some sort of external gain. So in our situation, the external gain would be to win disability benefits, right? Now, notice it has to be intentional. It can't be like a personal subjective perception that a patient could have. That's entirely not malingering. That's just the way they feel pain or what have you. So it's something a little bit more, you want to almost say fraudulent. Okay. And I do touch on fraudulent, but I don't know if we'll go into that here because I think the people that are concerned about malingering are just concerned, like, if I really say how bad it is, are they going to think I'm faking it? And I don't think that's really a concern, and we've done this in other videos where, be thoughtful how you describe things. I know Jonathan and I have discussed, when you go into a doctor's office, and you've gotten there on your own accord and you've walked into the office, and when he asks for your pain level, you say a 10 out of 10, it might not be believed because a 10 out of 10 would probably be bedridden and writhing in pain. All right. Okay. Oh, just going on. The reason why the issue of malingering can be important is because it impacts your credibility, which also impacts the final adjudication of your claim. If it gets egregious enough, it could be potential fraud, and no one wants to see that. You don't want to do it. You don't want to see it. You guys, if you ever pay attention to the Friday fraud law review that I delve into on Fridays, when something is very fraudulent, they will prosecute. And we've had cases reported and they're all reported by the Office of Inspector General. I just regurgitate them. We've had cases where someone malingered the severity of, say, a back impairment for many, many years while working a full-time job off the books, so to speak, in something that would totally be inconsistent with the allegations and the claims made upon which he was awarded. And ironically, you have to think that there had to be some sort of medical provider who contributed to that fraud. Not necessarily, though. It could be that it was very bad at the time. The person improved, failed to tell the SSA, and continued to omit that evidence, which you're really not supposed to. And also, and the intention can be derived from this, went out and was working 40 hours a week under the table without telling the SSA when you know you're supposed to report any new work you do or any change in work thereafter to the SSA. I keep looking, it's because I keep hearing something out there. All right, so I just want to go over then for the rest of this. Again, what is malingering? We wanted to know how the SSA handles it, maybe some red flags you might want to just be aware of. Like if you look in your medical records, this is why it is also important for you to look in your medical records to make sure there's not something there like a false indicator of malingering. You need to know. And then maybe some ways that we can defend and avoid the whole issue of malingering. I will say it is very uncommon in my practice. Very, very uncommon. I'm trying to even think if there was ever actually a true one. I would say no. First of all, if I ever found out about it, I'd be disconnected from the case immediately. But there's like a soft approach that the SSA takes when things aren't clear. And it also applies to people who aren't malingering and how they kind of weight their information with less gusto, resulting in a denial. So we'll go over that kind of in a second. Okay, so just to put it in the big scope of the whole framework of how the SSA legal and administrative framework works. As you know, there's a sequential evaluation process, steps 1 through 5. We have a whole playlist on that with the rundown of what they are, and then also each one individually taken. All the videos are pretty brief, I do believe. And this sequential evaluation process works for both Title II SSDI cases as well as Title 16 SSI cases. To learn more about that and how symptoms are evaluated, you'd want to see SSR, Social Security Ruling 16-3P, and that's where they go into how the SSA is to evaluate and assess symptoms such as pain and fatigue and all those things, all of those kind of subjective complaints. And you'll also find that they used to talk about, and I haven't seen it in years now because of this change, they used to talk about claimant lacking credibility. And they changed the verbiage several years ago to instead frame it as the statements of the claimant are not entirely consistent with the medical records in the file. Not entirely consistent. So therefore, you're not saying that the person lacks credibility, which is a pretty harsh thing to say. But what they're saying doesn't match up with the records, which can happen and does happen all the time for completely innocent reasons. It's usually because the medical records are horrible. The medical providers are terrible recorders. They do an injustice to their patients when they do this, but that's a whole nother vent I could have. And some of you have already heard me do it, probably more than once. They also, one thing to perhaps look at, and this is for actual fraud, it's Social Security Ruling 22-2P. Again, it applies to SSI and SSDI cases, and it has to do with fraud in creating evidence that people have obviously been guilty of in the past. It's a fact that SSA and the SSRs, the rulings, don't actually use the word malingering. So that's kind of like a term of art that's just thrown about there by, sometimes you'll see it in a medical record and just by us lay people, right? Like the fellow that I was asking me if I could do a video on malingering. He used the word malingering. I knew what it meant because I use it as well, but they don't actually use that. They'll talk about evidence being inconsistent or, with the medical records, false statements, exaggerations, evidence manipulation could also be included as malingering. And all of that is kind of embedded in terms of the adjudication process that they're supposed to always keep a lookout for. So I guess one concept with malingering is it differs from the genuine impairment that you have in that the symptom reporting is intentionally falsified or exaggerated. Again, so it's not the hypochondriac unless they are intentionally doing it, in which case it's not hypochondriacism, right? There's got to be an intention to pull a ruse, to pull the wool over somebody's eyes. Okay, so if the adjudicator finds out that there is evidence, if they find the evidence of malingering or similar behavior, such as false statements in the records or inconsistent evidence or outright exaggeration, they can deny the claim and or the evidence can be discounted. So whatever that evidence pertains to, at the very least, it's going to be discounted and or not considered. But worse, the claim may be totally denied as a result. That part is over. If you're looking for the following part, if there is one, or a preceding part to the same video that was longer, just look under the channel for the same title video. They are named the same, and they just have part 1, part 2, part 3, or whatever part it is. So feel free to take a look, see, and complete the video. Take care.